Shalom to Gabriel Grossman, Mayor of Bal Harbour, Florida.
Thank you. How are you? Shalom.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Good. Thanks for having me.
So you've been involved in the battle, the struggle, the war against BDS for some time already. Tell us, when did this journey begin?
Well, the journey specifically on dealing with the BDS movement and anti-Semitism in my public capacity started in December of 2015 when I wrote and passed the nation's first municipal anti-BDS ordinance here in Bal Harbour.
And why? Why go into this really complex issue?
So I've always been very involved in the Jewish community outside of my role in the public world and with Israel, and I'd been following the rise of the BDS movement and everything that came with it. And I learned that the United Church of Christ, one of the largest church groups in the United States, that summer of 2015 voted nationally to boycott and divest from Israel. It was relevant to me because we have a United Church of Christ church in Bal Harbour. So it was something that I saw an opportunity. The state of South Carolina had just passed the nation's first state anti-BDS law, and I realized that we can do the same thing on a municipal level and really have an effect immediately in the situation we were going to be dealing with in my city. And then it ended up really spreading across the country.
What's the practical meaning of all these legislations? How do we see it on the field?
So it's important to understand them. And none of the laws in the U.S. prohibit somebody from boycotting Israel or anyone. What they do is each government entity has the right to decide within certain parameters who they're going to enter into contracts with. So our municipality, for example, now for 3 years has a law in place that says that we will only enter into any contract with any entity if they can confirm and attest in a contract that they're not involved in the boycott of any authorized U.S. trading partner, including Israel. The state legislations that have passed now in 26 states across the U.S. are each individual for each state. It's not about private actors and private contracts between different people. There are very, very large and significant contracts that are entered into with cities and with states, and each of these legislations target those specific contracts.
How do you answer those who say, maybe especially in the beginning of this whole struggle, why make them relevant? Why relate to them at all? Why not just ignore them and just let it pass?
Yeah, so that was the argument that was made by most of the Israeli Jewish community and the Jewish community abroad, frankly, at first, when the BDS movement really started in 2006, 2007, in the beginning. And that's really why we were late to the game. We didn't give them legitimacy. They gave themselves legitimacy through their actions. And primarily in college campuses around the United States, we've seen what happened as we were slow as a community to respond to the rise of the BDS movement, acting through different groups like the Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, and other groups like that. And we were slow to respond to that for that exact reason. Let's not respond; it'll pass. This is just going to be a quick little thing, and it really has not been. And luckily now, because we've begun to take it seriously, we've really put the brakes on any practical aspects of the BDS movement, with a few exceptions that we're working on, and we've really now made them less relevant than they even were a few years ago on a practical level. Now we can speak about what their real strategy is.
Now, what we're seeing, is this all relating only to Judea and Samaria or to the entire state of Israel, the entire land of Israel?
No, well, this is about all of the most of the laws that have passed, including mine, include all of Israel, Judea and Samaria, Israel. A lot of people in the press and in the political realm around the world try to create these distinctions that those that are trying to harm us and harm Israel don't make, where they say, well, they're really just trying to attack products from Judea and Samaria instead of the rest of Israel. And first of all, that's not the case. And second of all, and you live in Israel, so you know this better than I do, but I'm there very often as well. And we know that it's not just Judea and Samaria. Pre-67 includes Jerusalem, so most of Jerusalem. So if you include any business, Bamba, let's say sell their chips in the old city of Jerusalem, they'd be boycotted just as much as someone, because they sell there. Just because they sell in Tel Aviv, it doesn't make a difference. But the majority of the calls to boycott are for all of Israel, first of all, and the ones that the purpose of these calls to boycott really at this point has shifted from making economic impact on Israel and then more really having a psychological impact and a political impact in the United States on how people are viewing Israel. And that's really when you hear about people talking about the delegitimization of Israel, and that's really what's happening. Why year over year over year in universities across the United States, they're voting to boycott against Israel, even if they don't pass the vote. The fact that they're having these conversations, the fact that they get this platform to spew all these lies about the Jewish people and about Israel, that in and of itself is a victory in their eyes, in the eyes of the BDS movement.
Now, your work that you're telling us about, it's spreading. We're seeing this nationwide throughout the United States, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't me alone that we worked with. Everyone who works on this really works together. In the beginning, even from day one, I was in touch with Alan Clemens, a representative from South Carolina who championed the first anti-BDS law. But my work on trying to spread this across the United States, and it's now in over 60 cities in the United States and 26 states. But in my work and talking about it and speaking to communities about it, you realize very quickly that this is about a much bigger issue about delegitimization of Israel and then also just pure anti-Semitism. So at the end of this last year, I wrote and passed the first law codifying a definition of anti-Semitism that came out of the State Department in 2010, but was then buried, that included what they call the 3 Ds of anti-Israel rhetoric, of when it could cross the line into anti-Semitism, which is double standards, demonization, and delegitimization. And I passed it in my small municipality, and within 1 month, I was able to have it passed by the entire Miami-Dade County Chiefs of Police Association, which is 39 cities across the Miami region, what we call the county, the Miami region, and it's now been implemented there. And I'm excited to say that since then, now South Carolina has passed it. And now for this next session in Congress, there's already a bill on the floor to do the same thing on the federal level. So there's really a lot of momentum behind it.
So you're saying that on the field now it's easier to define and respond to attacks, to incidents that are anti-Semitic?
Sure. I mean, that's what happens all the time. And the reality is that the purpose of this legislation is really to codify what anti-Semitism is. And you have that in a lot of different areas of discrimination, but not in anti-Semitism. Because if a law enforcement officer or police officer is looking at an incident, right, it's hard for them to understand. They're not really involved in what's happening around the country and around the world to understand that it's anti-Semitism. I'll give you a very simple example. If someone is beating someone else up while saying "Free Palestine" on a college campus, right? The police officer has no immediate way of understanding, unless they really are knowledgeable of what's happening, that this Jewish kid, presumably walking across campus, who was just assaulted, he was assaulted because he was Jewish, which makes it a hate crime. Why? Because he was really the Free Palestine thing. Where this Jewish kid has nothing to do with what's happening there or anywhere else in the world, and he's just being attacked because he's Jewish, and that's an anti-Semitic hate crime. And there's also the same thing with vandalism. We had an issue in Miami where they were spray painting BDS in front of Jewish-owned businesses in the arts district called Wynwood in downtown Miami. They were spray painting in front of Jewish businesses. Wherever they found a mezuzah, they would write BDS. The police were looking at it like just vandalism, until a group of activists here in South Florida, people who are involved in the community, went and met with the police and explained to them that this is just discrimination, national origin discrimination. So this is, when I presented it to the police chiefs, I wasn't sure how they would react. And they were just thrilled to be able to have these tools for them to make the decision. We're not telling them this is what a hate crime is, this is not a hate crime. But this is the language that's being used today in committing hate crimes against Jews.
Tell me, please, how do you relate to the claims according to which the current administration is not doing enough against anti-Semitism? We heard this in the beginning regarding the statements, regarding the different responses to different incidents throughout America.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think the administration has done incredible things for the state of Israel, more than any administration in recent years. And that's something that's been proven especially in the last month with the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. If you're asking specifically about there was a march in Charlottesville, Virginia, that made the headlines where they were chanting, "The Jews will not replace us," and the president's response was terrible. And I was out there speaking against what he said. He gave a very soft, equivocal response, saying, there were good people on both sides. We have to look at what was happening. So that was definitely something that he did not do right. But he's been doing a lot for the state of Israel, which is the nation of the Jewish people. So in that sense, he's doing a lot. Can more be done to fight anti-Semitism? Absolutely. Specifically, there's an anti-Semitism office in the State Department, and that seat still isn't filled. And we think that's very important in the community. We think it's very important for someone to be in that seat to help lead the charge across the nation in fighting this issue.
How would you say this challenging with the BDS, how would you say this affects the Jewish identity of American Jewry and the attitude towards Israel?
Yeah, I think that's really the key question when you're looking at what's happening with BDS in the United States. The diaspora Jewry in general is very weak. Over 60% of Jews in the United States don't even have any connection with their Judaism at all. And that's from a recent Pew Research poll, and it's right. If it's not the number, if anything, the number is higher. And when you overlay this constant bashing of Israel, this constant BDS and anti-Semitism and lies of apartheid over and over and over in the mainstream media, in college campuses, in churches, in different social groups, over and over, all it does is push the Jewish community even further away, not just from the state of Israel, but from their Jewish identity. Which is why, for me, the most important thing we can do is to fight back against the BDS movement and against anti-Semitism in a strong manner, but not just fight against it, but offer something positive for the Jewish community to get behind, to start galvanizing the Jews in the diaspora so we can change those numbers and really have a stronger diaspora and therefore a stronger Israel.
I see behind you on the wall, it says, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Are you going to be visiting soon?
Yeah, I'll be there, God willing, in the summer and a few times. I was there in January for a few conferences, but it's never enough.
And do you feel that there's cooperation with the state of Israel in terms of this whole struggle against the BDS?
There is now every day more. I was at the conference that was put together by Gilad Erdan in January in Jerusalem, dealing with exactly this issue. I was able to present what it is I've done in Bal Harbor, and they brought leaders from all over the world to discuss this and offering sort of their support, if anything, just their emotional support, and sort of trying to make the connections between the whole community. I think Israel was a little slow to responding to the BDS movement and anti-Semitism, and thinking we have other things to deal with. But I think now finally the community in Israel is realizing the importance of this, and together we're going to come out stronger from it like we always do.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, and of course, thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Good night.